difference in your treat.
Time now for Niner Talk Central. Here's Dylan DeSimone and Turron Davenport.
Okay, so here we go. Back in the house once again. Niner Talk Central. Dylan DeSimone, Bleacher Report, Turron Davenport, Base Sportsnet. Dylan, what's up, man?
What's going on, Turron? It's good to be with you again, man.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Always good to be on the air. Glad to come in and talk some shot with you. I tell you what, man, that music, it's grown on me. It's grown on me. Our producer, Brian, put together a nice little sound check for us, and it's growing on me, man. So speaking of applause, man, we got some really big news for the 49ers today with the acquisition of Eric Wright, so we're going to get into that. We actually going to talk to Matt Maiocco also, talk a little bit about what he thinks is coming up with training camp. So we got a pretty decent show, hoping to get another guest on, and we'll see how things go.
Yeah, man, I just wanted to welcome everybody to the fourth installment of Niner Talk Central. Yeah, Eric Wright, man, that was kind of brought up today. The 49ers made another trade. The savvy front office brought in Eric Wright from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Obviously, they had brought in Jonathan Banks and Darrelle Revis. And, yeah, another opportunity was made available. It seems like San Francisco got a steal. What do you think?
I like the move a lot. It's interesting that this happened. Let me tell you, Eric Wright is a guy I like dating back to his time with the Cleveland Browns. I spoke to him before the Lions game when when the Niners played them in Detroit, and he said that there was definitely interest in him, and there was interest in him last year, but the Bucs deal, that $37.5 million deal, was just something that the 49ers couldn't do, and it's just amazing that the way things work. The NFL is funny, and his former head coach Eric Mangini with the Browns ends up in San Francisco, and the way things just fell in place, and now he's a 49er, and I'm definitely excited about it. He's a guy that will definitely help out, especially when it comes to playing against the smaller receivers, which have traditionally killed this 49er team. So it's a great pickup as long as everything works out.
You know, that's all they brought in, too. Slot nickel-type corners that can, run with the slot receivers. They brought in one kind of, outside Osama, which was pretty much a no-brainer. The only thing they invested in the draft, everybody was surprised they did not take a cornerback. They waited to the 7th to take Marcus Cooper from Rutgers. They've been looking to fix the secondary, and it was pretty much all offseason. It's been the secondary, it's been the special teams. When it comes to depth and just overall proficiency, two things that kind of killed them late in the season. And what competition they're going to have at cornerback. I cannot believe the competition they're going to have at cornerback.
Yeah, it's definitely there are 6 starting caliber corners. As you said, there was a little Twitter banter in regards to Parrish Cox, but sometimes you got to look past the fact that he's not a big name player and just look at his ability. And we talked to Parrish, and we know that he's a guy that could cover the slot. He's the second best option for the 49ers there. Eric Wright can also come in and cover the slot. You got your outside corners in Nnamdi. You got T. Brown, who's been the most consistent corner. And, how could we forget Chris Culliver, who I think is really the most versatile corner back there. He's the guy that, as you had mentioned before, could move over to the safety spot if need be. But he's definitely one of the bright young corners in the NFL as well. So the secondary is good.
It's real good. And, it's probably the overlooked part. But, how many corners are we talking that they're going to go into the season with? 5, 6?
5 or 6. But it's going to be interesting which ones they go in with, because you got Nnamdi, a guy who doesn't play special teams. See, there's these veterans, you know what I mean? And that's where Parrish Cox has a value. He is a special teams player as well. So I think he's somebody that's going to make it. Namdi, it's so interesting when like he's what I would call an enigma. We don't know what we're going to get from this guy. Are we going to get the guy that excels when he's able to be on the line of scrimmage and press, or are we going to get the guy that just was a fish out of water in the zone defense with the Philadelphia Eagles? We'll see what happens there. Los Rogers is a veteran. I'm not really going to expect him to play special teams. We know what his role is on the team. He's a starter, and when they go to the nickel package, he bumps inside.
So has his value diminished because of that? We're talking about Rodgers aging, being owed the most money, coming off a down year, and now you bring in all these extra corners. You got to start, asking who are the cap casualties going to be? Who's going to get cut that we don't see coming?
Rodgers' value is not diminished in the least, especially by bringing in Namdi. Now, Eric Wright may be somebody that could cause him to get pushed out the door just because he is a guy that could cover the slot, and he instantly becomes the top competition for Los Rogers as far as who's the best slot corner. So that'll be interesting. The cap number, from what I understand, and see, this is the thing that's confusing. I've heard two different numbers from two pretty good sources. One has said that as of April 1st, Los's number, $1.5 million of his salary was guaranteed. Now another one said that as of April 1st, $5.5 million of that was guaranteed. So there's a bit of variance there. But either way, there's a large amount that's going to be owed to Los Rogers. But I just can't see this team making themselves worse at the corner position by releasing Carlos Rogers.
Yeah, I mean, he would get picked up in a second, but it's become more of a relevant topic. I didn't mean to suggest that Rodgers was in danger of going out the door, but you have to consider that all the type corners that they've kind of brought in, and what they have their boundary guys. I think Terrell Brown, one of their best guys, and does primarily play on the boundary, and then Nnamdi Asomugha is somebody I do believe in, going into the season, and yeah, special teams, and if it's all or nothing, does Harbaugh risk it?
I mean, you mentioned all of the guys they brought in, but honestly, looking at it outside of Eric Wright, I don't really see them having brought in a guy that has ability similar to Los Rogers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess questions about Culver possibly, where he's going to be. Yeah, like you said, overall there's just a lot of uncertainty with what we're going to get with a lot of the corners. So for safety reasons, consistency, to have the three guys returning that kind of got them to the Super Bowl last year would probably be in their best interest.
Yeah, I mean, look, this secondary is in good shape. That's, if you ask me, it's in good shape. I like the fact that going into training camp, they have 6 guys that could play. That's for sure. And Tremaine Brock is not bad. He's a decent guy. Of course, his value comes by way of special teams. But then the other thing you have to consider, and a lot of people just want to point the finger at the secondary, as far as the season went down to the wire, they point at the secondary and they say that they were the reason why. Well, look, you have to mention the fact that the pass rush suffered a bit too. That is something that they did address. We talked about Lemonwa. He's somebody that they brought in to be a situational pass rusher, and obviously Tank Carradine is somebody that will be a presence as well. A healthy Justin Smith, a healthy Alden Smith, Ahmad Brooks, Ray McDonald. These guys all have to get pressure on the quarterback.
Yeah, and I think they're going to do that too. I mean, I think we might see their best days. They might have the best front seven. They might have the best front seven that they've had in 3 years under Harbaugh.
I have no doubt that this front seven is the best in football. The front three, yeah. I mean, you talk about Glenn Dorsey. That's something that you have to factor in, and he's a guy that's going to clog up the middle. They're in good shape. Defensively, this team is in good shape. I don't really see a weakness on this team outside of, you have Whitner. They're going to use him closer to drop him in the box more, closer to the line of scrimmage. And I think in that 10 to 15 yard window, so to speak, he's somebody that could give you a little bit of coverage. I don't think that that's a problem. But outside of that 15 yards, I don't trust Whitner.
Yeah.
At all. You know what I mean? So
yeah. No, it's hard to, and especially what we've seen when, also in red zone situations, whether it was against the Dolphins or the Vikings, bigger, stronger tight ends just kind of they just power through them.
Well, I tell you what, that also leads me into, I dropped an article on Eric Reed this morning, and it's just a training camp preview. And you look at his size, 6'1", 212. You look at his 40 to 4.53. You look at his vertical, a 40-inch. You look at if you look at the combine, the way that he was flipping his hips and how loose he was and able to change direction and go and high point the ball, I say all that to say having him back there is going to help out a lot when it comes to defending these tight ends. You look at what the 49ers typically do. They don't trust Dante Whitner to cover a tight end. They don't trust, and I wouldn't either. But you look at what they do, you got Bowman and you got Patrick Willis. That's who they usually match up. Patrick Willis was matched up with slipped my mind. The tight end down there for the Saints, Jimmy Graham, in one of those games, and then you also you got Bowman who could cover as well. But now you're bringing in a guy that doesn't have the disadvantage as much in the height category. Eric Reed is going to be a player in this secondary. He's going to make this secondary that much better. And that was a great pickup by the 49ers and trading up to get him. I like Eric Reed. I'm high on him. And this season is going to be exciting, man. It's going to be exciting. Just every different angle that you look at this football team, there's competition all the way down to the long snapper. And this roster is stacked, and this season is going to be a really good season for the 49ers.
Yeah, I agree, man. I totally agree. The results they're going to put on the field this year, I mean, you don't want to get ahead of yourself, but I mean, the makings for something special are there. They do have all the pieces. But yeah, a lot of unknown elements, and that's what's kind of raised all the questions. I think we have more questions this year than we had the past 2 years.
I mean, what other questions do you have? We had the question about the corners, who's going to make it.
Well, not from a negative standpoint, but a lot of unknowns. Just a lot of unknowns, a lot of new players. We mentioned that all of the skill players, almost entirely, have just kind of grown into this offense, or will be growing into this offense this year. Outside of Gore and Hunter and Davis, I mean, they're going to be counting on like 5 other guys to kind of step in and make a difference.
Right. Well, I mean, we'll see what happens. I definitely could see the question about the receiver position. But you know what there's not a question about this year?
Quarterback.
Yes, sir. And that's what it all revolves around, man. There's a guy behind center that's dynamic, that is a threat to score from every point on the field. So that's definitely going to be a major factor for this football team.
As long as he keeps that golden state of mind.
No Dolphins hats, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at Kaepernick, and that was a good article you did as far as what more can we expect from him. And you look at him, a lot of people want to be so quick to say that he's somebody that is a running quarterback and can't pass from the pocket. And I say it time and time again, I challenge them to go ahead and watch the Falcons game and watch the Patriots game as well, but even watch the Ravens game. This guy sat back in the pocket and just caused havoc from the pocket. Some of the balls that he threw to Crabtree, a real nice ball to Vernon Davis, to Delaney Walker, even the little back shoulder one to keep him from getting pummeled by Pollard. these are things that you don't typically get from a guy that's only played 10 games.
No, not at all. And the confidence, the bravado to put it on a covered receiver, which is something that's the biggest difference in my eyes when you break it down is uh, Alex didn't really start doing that until late, and I still only can remember a few examples. I remember the touchdown of Michael Crabtree versus Patrick Peterson in his last full game. Actually, he was really just starting to pull the trigger and give his receivers a chance to find the ball. And Kaepernick did that right away. And one of the examples was the divisional playoff game versus the Packers, and Crabtree was lined up to the left and ran a post and just bulleted it.
Absolute laser. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Yeah, it makes me smile, man, just thinking of that because it feels so good to have a guy at quarterback that you could just have confidence in, and you don't have to worry about him hesitating. And that's the thing with Alex Smith. There was always so much hesitation, and I mean I've gone over it time and time again. He was a safe football player, and that's fine, but you could only go so far playing safe. Sometimes you have to risk. You have to take risk, high return, and that's what you get in Kaepernick.
Now, he's got a lot of he's got basically everything you kind of need to play the position. But, I have talked him up a lot. I think a lot of people are really enamored with his skills. But what do you think he can do better? How is he going to get better from this year to the next?
Well, that's a good question, and that was actually posed to me before. I really think the main thing that he has to do, got to work on the clock management. And like I mentioned before, in the Rams game, he ran out of bounds. There was still time left that could have been ticked off the clock, and that's an example. You got the Super Bowl. I don't think that was 100% his fault, but for whatever reason, the play got off late, and he had a wide open running lane to the end zone to score the go-ahead touchdown, but Harbaugh had to call the timeout. So that's one thing that you have to look at, the time clock management. Additionally, I think that he needs to go through his reads more, go through his progressions, and not lock in on receivers, because there were a couple. You look at the Patriots game, the interception by the Twins, Devin McCourty, the interception that he had in the end zone. Pre-snap read, it was there that Crabtree was going to be open on the post, but once the ball was hiked, he didn't look at the safety. He didn't look him off, and that actually hurt because you need to move the safety away from the throwing lane that you're going to throw the ball, and he didn't do that, and that was an interception in the end zone.
Yeah. So there are things he can work on. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
All right, so we're back from the break, and we're going to get ready to bring Matt Maiocco in, lead beat writer for the San Francisco 49ers. He's with Comcast Sportsnet. Matt is a really good writer for the 49ers. I definitely like his work. He keeps the updates flowing. He's probably the premier guy in San Francisco, so I'm looking forward to talking to him. And Dylan, that's going to be a good conversation. We're going to go over some things with training camp and just pick his brain.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to him. He seems pretty geared up for this year's training camp. Because like we were talking about before, a lot of new players. So he's got a lot to look at, a lot to analyze, and see who fits where.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a guy who has all access to the facility. He'll give you a really good insider's look at everything, and I'm looking forward to finding out his thoughts about some of the guys like Glenn Dorsey, asking him about the receivers. So It's going to be a good convo. So we're going to go ahead and go to break, and when we come back, we'll have Matt Maiocco on the line.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
All right, so we got Matt Maiocco on the line from Comcast Bay Area. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Just counting down the days until training camp begins. Next week it'll be full go with the veterans on the field and get to see these guys in pads for the first time since the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to that as well. Dylan, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, Matt, what's going on? Dylan DeSimone, Bleacher Report. It's good to talk to you again.
Yeah, great to be on your show, on your podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome to finally have you on here, and yeah, it was big. Now we wanted to talk to you about training camp. Well, there's a lot of new faces. We were kind of wondering who you were in particular kind of excited to see this year.
Well, I think of the new faces, the guys who, will step in immediately and play. Of the veterans, of course, Anquan Boldin. When they got him, they got him with the idea that he would be a complementary piece, with Michael Crabtree being the unquestioned number one receiver. Now, when you look at it, that move was essential because besides Anquan Boldin, there's really not a whole lot of NFL success to speak of among the other wide receivers. I think Mario Manningham is the second guy, who's had some success at the NFL level, but he's going to probably open the season or the training camp on PUP. He may or may not be ready for the start of the regular season. I think in any event, you're probably not going to see a full strength Manningham at the start of the regular season. So Bolden's big. The other guy on defense of the veterans would be Glenn Dorsey. He was a high draft pick, obviously, with the Chiefs. Didn't live up to the high expectations there, but a guy that I think comes into a very good situation in that he's not going to be asked to rush the passer. He's not going to be asked to get 5, 6, 7 sacks this season. His job is going to be pretty much what Isaac Sopuaga did last year and Ricky Jean-Francois. It's to get in there on base downs, stuff the run, and he can probably provide a little bit more pass rush than Sopuaga did last year. So I think those two guys are the key guys.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on the Dorsey thing. I think that he is exactly going to do exactly what you're saying as far as not having to accumulate a lot of sacks. He's a run stuffer, and that's something we actually talked about a few shows ago about how he is a guy that will replace Soap and Ricky Jean. And along with that, you have Ian Williams. So definitely a good point there.
Hey, Matt.
Ian Williams is a guy, that I really haven't seen much of.
Right.
Nobody has seen much of him, but it really raised some eyebrows when the 49ers gave him that extension early in the offseason, something they didn't have to do, but they gave him $1 million guaranteed, which is a pretty good chunk of change for a guy who's never really even stepped on the field and a guy that the 49ers signed as an undrafted free agent for no signing bonus. So they must like what they see from Ian Williams, so I think they expect him to be in that rotation as well.
Yeah, I agree. Now, another move that they made was with Paris Harrison. Now, they were able to get him to redo his deal to a much more cap-friendly deal. Have you seen him at any of the OTAs?
Yeah, no, he's been, even when he was injured last year, I mean, he was a fixture in that locker room.
Right.
Some guys, when they get injured and they're out for the season, they kind of fall off the radar screen. Not Paris Harrelson. I mean, he was in there every day, and I think that impressed the coaching staff. He did a pretty good job in 2011 in his role, which was basically a first and second down outside linebacker, set the table for Aldon Smith to come in and rack up some sacks. But I would expect him to be the number 3 outside linebacker, a guy who can play both sides, a guy who can fill in for Aldon Smith and Ahmad Brooks, whether it's as an outside linebacker or in the nickel with his hand on the ground and going to get the quarterback. So, all you mentioned, Harrelson, basically there's 3 veteran guys, and when you looked at it, their contracts made them vulnerable to being cut. And all three of those guys redid their deals. Harrelson, Jonathan Goodwin, and Mario Manningham. So, I expect all three of those guys to be on the team when they break camp for that 53-man roster.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now, I was wondering if, they did trade up for Corey Lemonois, the Auburn kid who does get after the passer, and that was kind of something that lacked outside of Justin and Alden. It seems like they'd like to bring pressure from, more spots, and so, blocking schemes can't focus in on them. Do you think Corey actually has an edge to kind of come up and earn some time over Paris?
Well, I think apples and oranges a little bit. I think what Lemonnier is going to do is that his chance would be to get in there in those nickel situations to rush the passer. I think in the base scheme where the outside linebacker is standing up, I think that would favor Harrelson. But certainly Lemonnier has an opportunity to work himself into the mix. It's all about how he shows up once the pads go on. The one thing we know about him, and it's interesting, I think when you look at what translates from college football to pro football, if you can rush the passer, you can rush the passer.
Right.
And Corey Lemonnier can rush the passer. And it doesn't take long to find out if a guy in the NFL can get after the quarterback. Rarely do you see a guy, who struggles for a few years coming out and then explodes on the scene. Usually those pass rushers show up from day one. And so he's a guy that the 49ers like. They know that he's a natural pass rusher, and he'll get an opportunity to get on the field and work into that rotation.
Yeah, I think he's going to benefit a lot from working with Alden Smith and working on his hands. That was something we touched on before, because watching some of the things some of his tape, one thing that happens is the linemen are able to get their hands on him a lot. And like I said last week, you get a guy like Anthony Davis that gets their hands on you, and you're not really going to be able to do much. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
Look, go ahead.
I was going to say that, there's one thing that Vic Fangio doesn't seem to have a whole lot of patience for, and that's, rookie mistakes, young guy mistakes. And if he has four guys, in their positions that he likes, he's going to play them, and he's going to continue to play them until, their jaws are hanging. And I think that kind of caught up with the 49ers last season. Of course, there were some injuries that, obviously the injury to Justin Smith had a huge impact on the 49ers defense. But it's really, the onus is on those young guys to get in there and show that there's not that much of a drop-off when Justin Smith is out of the game, when Ray McDonald is out of the game, when Alden Smith is out of the game, when Ahmad Brooks is out of the game. Otherwise, if Vic Fangio doesn't think that those guys can hold up their end of the bargain, he's not going to play them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, I wanted to switch to the offensive side of the ball. I was catching something on CSN Bay Area the other day. You were talking about how basically the quarterback makes his receivers better. A good quarterback like Colin Kaepernick makes his receivers better. Now, we were talking about earlier somebody kind of stepping up in place of Michael Crabtree, or at least to supplement that production that was left behind. I like Kyle Williams, and Turron knows this. What do you think of Kyle Williams given his athletic ability?
Yeah, I think he's a better fit in the slot. But when you look at the whole group of guys, there's, like I said, there's not, anyone is going to have to kind of have that breakout, because obviously A.J. Jenkins did nothing as a rookie. Quentin Patton's he's a rookie this year. Ricardo Lockett is a guy that, hasn't experienced much NFL success. Kyle Williams' biggest season is probably about 20, 22 catches. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have to get production, and I don't think it's going to be one guy, who steps in and takes over for Crabtree. I think you're going to see, almost a wide receiver by committee type of thing, where they find the niche of each player, and maybe they keep, maybe they have four wide receivers, and they use one guy for certain plays and another guy for certain looks or situations. And I believe that Kyle Williams, definitely is in that mix, because, there's some talent there. And he was the number 3 receiver a year ago. He was getting more playing time than Randy Moss before the injury. So Guy Williams definitely fits into that, but I could see a situation where, you have a guy like Bolden maybe catches, 65 to 75 passes, and then you have, instead of a true number two, you have about 3 or 4 guys who are the number 2 guys, guys who are catching, 35 to 45 passes, something like that. And then I think you're going to see more production from Vernon Davis, probably something that reflects maybe more toward what he produced in the playoffs and what he produced in the regular season. I think Vance McDonald can have an impact, a bigger impact in the passing game than Delaney Walker, and I think Frank Gore and the running backs might catch more passes out of the backfield. So I don't think you'll be able to look at this at the end of the season and say, aha, this guy replaced Crabtree. I think it's going to be a group effort.
Yeah, great points. Great points. I think it is going to be a committee type of thing. I like A.J. Jenkins stepping up. That's somebody I think that will play outside at the X position. KW is a guy that could play the slot. So you're definitely 100% right with that. So I know you're limited on time, and we appreciate you coming on. And it was a pleasure having you on the show. And I always like meeting up with you before the games. We always have a good conversation. So it's cool to get it recorded and talk a little shop with you on the show. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you guys thinking of me. And, I do enjoy the pre-games before the season when I'm ever able to make it out to the parking lot and meet up with you guys. So look forward to seeing you guys during the course of the season this year as well.
Football fans, looking to get healthy this year? Now is the time, and I have the perfect place for you. Save 10% at onit.com/football radio. Exclusive PFC radio listeners save 10% off their order. That's onit.com, ONNIT.com/football radio.
All right, so we're back on. That was a good interview with Maiocco. I was glad that he was able to come on. Always like talking to him, man. He's a really cool dude.
Yeah, man, he's one of the best out there. I mean, it's great. I love being able to talk to Matt.
Yeah, so just in our exiting the show, just wanted to touch base a little bit about the running backs. I know that's something you wanted to talk about for quite some time. You got training camp starting next week, and I'm definitely happy to see Kendall Hunter coming back and healthy and ready to go. I know you did a lot of work writing about LaMichael James and, of course, Frank Gore. What are your thoughts, your parting shots on the running backs?
Carry distribution is something I've been thinking about, how, everyone's going to kind of get involved. They talked about, especially Trent Baalke was talking about the 3-headed attack that they want to go with. This year, they finally have all those dynamic components to do the 3-headed attack that they want to do. So kind of wondering what their game plan is to get everybody touches and how much that's going to affect Frank Gore's carry, who's actually seen 25 less carries since Harbaugh's been here.
Yeah, well, I think the thing with Frank Gore was actually by design. They want to go ahead and limit his carries during the season so that they have him during the postseason. This team wins and loses with Frank Gore, his getting 100 yards or not. But you look at LaMichael, you look at Kendall Hunter, those are 2 guys that you could get touches. It doesn't specifically have to be in the run. They could get touches in the passing game. I really like LaMichael James going up against pretty much any linebacker in the NFL, and I like him against most safeties. So if they run the big nickel package to defend our speed all over the field, they're ready for it, the 49ers, that is. So I really am excited about this. I like the way Frank Gore is getting his carries limited, because that's going to hopefully keep him around a little bit longer.
Yeah, the longevity is something I was thinking about. So you hit the nail on the head right there. And yeah, the playoffs. So those 2 things is a reason enough to not overwork Frank. If we have, if things are looking good in the second half of the game, to, incorporate Kendall Hunter and LaMichael James a little bit more. And, adding on to what you said again, getting those balls to the receiver, to LaMichael and Kendall as receivers. That's a whole other dynamic that I think they're going to be able to add this year. I've drawn comparisons from LaMichael James to Darren Sproles,
right,
and how they're going to want to get him the ball as a receiver.
Yeah, and even you got to remember, I mean, it was a little bit ago, but back when Mike Martz was the coordinator, Frank Gore lined up at receiver sometimes, so he's still a guy that can catch the ball out the backfield. I love him in the screen game. And look, the running game, as you know, this team is a run-first team still, even with Kaepernick at quarterback, but it's just that much more dangerous because now you have another guy who could break a 70-yard run. You have another guy who is a legitimate threat to get yards in a hurry. So I'm excited about this team, the running game, and we didn't even touch on the O-line on the show, and that's something I think we should probably look into next show because they have done what I would call build a bully of an offensive line. You look at Big Mike, Anthony Davis, Booney, Goodwin, and of course Joe Staley, the Joe Show. You got to feel good about that. So this team, me personally, I don't really see too many holes on this team, too many things to worry about. Excited about literally every position on this football team, all the way down to the kicker, man, Phil Dawson.
Yeah, I cannot argue there. I looked at everything he's done. He's the best kicker in the league right now.
Most efficient, most accurate, for sure.
Yeah, what was he? 7-7 from 50 yards out last year. I think he hit 93.5% from the field, and coming off an All-Pro year. And 49ers signed him, and it won't be mentioned again, but that's definitely going to help out.
Yeah, for sure. So there you have it. That's our show for today. Definitely tune in next week. We're going to have some guests for you. We're working on some things, and looking forward to talking next week, Dylan.
Yeah, man. We'll see you then.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.